Welcome to the Highlands Podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks again for joining us. We are coming to the end of an incredible book, the book of Philippians that was written by Paul to a church in the city of Philippi. Just an incredible book as full of practical instruction. And today we're talking about one verse. It's actually a long verse, and I want to thank Pastor Billy of our team for bringing an incredible message on thinking on thoughts from God, just a helpful message. And there's one phrase I want to focus on, which is the last part of the verse that I think will be an encouragement to us today. And Paul writes of Philippians chapter 4, verse number 8, and here's what he says. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, and if there's anything praiseworthy, dwell or think on these things. And what a great verse that gives us some framework of the kind of thoughts that you and I should have in our life. I was doing a little bit of study and guess how many thoughts you and I have per day. They've done some studies that range into like 60, 80,000 thoughts, but that's been unverified. It's actually probably closer to about 6,000 thoughts a day. So you and I, over 24 hours, and really not while we're awake and all those things, we end up having thousands of thoughts a day. In fact, I was thinking about it, man, if I have 6,000 thoughts a day, that probably means that I have 1,500 thoughts about sports. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I love sports. I think about sports a lot. And so probably 1,500 thoughts about sports. I probably think about 1,500 thoughts about church or work. Pastoring, that's a lot of my time as well. And then I also have 1,500 thoughts a day about Amy. Love you, Amy. And thinking about her, which means then I probably have to split the rest between my two daughters. And so I'm sorry, Aves and Val. But I don't know if that's every day, but that's probably roughly what I'm thinking about all the time. Really just those categories. But think about how many thoughts you and I have if we could filter them through all that Paul's talking about. For example, are all of our thoughts true? Are they honorable? Are they just? Are they pure? Are they lovely? Are they commendable? Like, those are pretty strict frameworks for you and I to be thinking about as we go through our 6,000 plus thoughts a day. In fact, I was thinking about Paul wrote to another church in the church of Corinth in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, where he encourages the church to take every thought captive to obey Christ. And as you think about that, man, 6,000 times a day, I need to take a thought captive to obey Christ. That's a lot of work. We have a lot of thoughts that come into our life that sometimes it just feels like it's out of nowhere. Sometimes it feels like, where did that thought come from? Sometimes it feels like I've been thinking about this for a while. Often, and I think the reason that Paul is telling us to take our thoughts captive and to think about those things that are true and lovely and pure and commendable is because our thoughts will often and nearly always lead to action. You see, whatever you do, it usually started with a thought. You don't just wake up one day and all of a sudden you cheated on your spouse, or you murdered somebody, or you stole from the company, or you cheated on your taxes. You don't just do those things. You thought about those things. You thought, and you didn't take thoughts that were captive. You didn't seek to obey Christ through your thoughts. And I want to share just a couple of thoughts of how we can take our thoughts captive. How can we think about those things that are true and lovely and pure and commendable? I think a couple things we need to remind ourselves of as we think about taking our thoughts captive is, I think the first thing you need to do very simply is you just need to arrest those thoughts. So let's say that you have a lustful thought that's not pure or not lovely or commendable. You need to arrest that thought and say, Jesus, would you please remove this thought from my mind and help me to stop thinking about this? It also means that you probably need to maybe change some of the things that you're viewing. Maybe it's social media. Maybe you need to stop following some profiles or some accounts because you know they lead you to some lustful thoughts. Maybe you need to turn the channel on. Maybe you're watching a sports game and there's some commercials that come up, or there's some ads, or whatever it is. But we need to be careful that we're taking captive the thoughts in our head, because sometimes we just think, well, it's okay. It's not cheating. It's just a thought. It's not a big deal. But actually, Jesus says it is a big deal. In fact, he says on his famous Sermon on the Mount that often when you lust on somebody, he sees it as the same as cheating on your spouse, because it's the thought that is going to ultimately lead to the action. He talks about murder. It starts with anger. And if we're just in our mind thinking this evil, terrible thought of mine, I wish they were gone, I wish they were dead, Jesus is like, that's where the thoughts of murder start. And you need to be careful about your thoughts. You need to back it all the way up and arrest those thoughts that are taking captive in your heart and your mind, because our thoughts often lead to actions. But then we also need to filter them. We need to arrest those thoughts, everything. And we need to filter them through what Paul gives us in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, which the filter is, are they true? Are they honorable? Are they just? Are they pure? Are they lovely? Are they commendable? And if we're honest, a lot of our thoughts, of our 6,000 plus thoughts, do not filter into those categories. We think about untrue things. We think about things that are just lies, and we think about gossip, and we think about things that are not pure. And there's a lot of thoughts in our life, if we're honest, that of our 6,000, that we would be embarrassed if we were to connect to a screen and we could see the playbook of your thoughts, playbook of my thoughts. There'd be a lot of thoughts of those 6,000 that we'd be like, turn your eyes, turn off. Oh, we unplugged the TV, the screen. Oh, we just cut the cord. We would be embarrassed. And so we need to filter our thoughts. And so Paul reminds us, he says, we need to think about these things. We need to arrest them, take them captive. We need to filter them, think about through what is true and honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable. And then we need to remove them. Anything that does not filter in these categories, we need to remove. And we need to remove whatever is triggering that thought. And we need to remove, maybe you need to put some sort of accountability software on your phone or your laptop. Maybe you need to cut your streaming subscription for that, whatever service you're watching or listening to, whatever it takes. We need to remove those thoughts. We need to dwell on these things. You see, your thoughts don't have to control you. In fact, Jesus, he speaks in the Gospels as he's teaching those that are listening to him. He says, out of the heart, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You see, it's what is in our thoughts, what's in our heart, what's in our soul that will eventually come out. And so Paul gives us a warning. He says, dwell on these things, think on these things, and remove everything else that doesn't fall under these filters. And so I want to share this reflection question with you, and it's very simple. What are you thinking about? If you were to categorize your thoughts of here's what I think about here, here's what I think about here, here's these thoughts, and you were to categorize them, could they fall under a Philippians 4:8 filter of true, of honorable, of pure, of lovely? And I would encourage you, what thoughts do you need to arrest and remove from your life to help you dwell on the things that God's calling you to dwell on? Your thoughts matter. They don't need to control you, but they do lead to action. So let's live out what God's called us to do by thinking the thoughts that he wants us to. I pray this has been encouraging to you. If it has, would you please share this with somebody, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our podcasts on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. We want to encourage you to share this. You can even leave a review. That helps us get the word out. We want to get God's word around the world, and we want to encourage people with the good news of the gospel. And I want to thank you for being part of this journey as we continue on in the book of Philippians. I'll see you in the next episode as we are almost wrapping up this incredible book that Paul wrote to the church at Philippi. God bless. I'll see you next time.